Hey there YouTube, welcome to Big Mike Beard Wisdom. So today we're going to be tackling some lights. So the ABS light's on, as well as the stability control light on over there. And then we're getting flashing messages for service traction control, as well as service Stabilitrak. And then this is just like the bulb check mode. So that's why the check engine light's on. The tire pressure light's on because like the sensors have kind of like died out in a couple of the wheels and stuff. So, but when I scanned this, I found a C0035 code for the left front wheel speed sensor circuit. And your left is the side from like the driver's seat. So in the driver's seat, left is the driver's side, right is the passenger side. So the left front isn't seeing any signal. And when I viewed the data stream, I could definitely see that it's reading 0 the entire time. With this being a 2009 Cadillac Escalade, it's going to be very similar to that same body style, Tahoe, Yukon, even the Silverados. And the way GM kind of designed everything is that you've got a wheel speed sensor here. There's the wire that goes down into the hub assembly and reads off the hub assembly. So I did a quick video on, ordering these, and I got a really good deal on Rock Auto for both the rear brakes and for this wheel speed sensor. So this is just this premium hub assembly from FVP. It's got good information here, so basically it's saying, don't just run it in with a gun, use a torque wrench, which, I mean, for as long as I've been doing these, I've always ran them in with a gun, so. But they do include a torque spec, so you can kind of see, here's all the vehicles that use maybe the same style hub and stuff, and the torque spec for that axle nut. So it looks like all of them are about 177 foot-pounds of torque, which is normally like with a gun. So we should be pretty good with that. And then you can see here a little bit about how that wheel hub assemblies is set up. So instead of having wheel bearings that you grease and can repair, GM went with this unitized hub and wheel bearing assembly, which is interesting. I don't exactly always agree with it because inevitably, sometimes it's easier just to replace a cheap set of bearing as opposed to replacing this entire assembly. But having this entire assembly sometimes is pretty simple to replace. And you're not worrying about having to press anything in and out. So price-wise, not so great. Ease of replacement, pretty simple. Well, depending on rust. Now, some of the old GM sensors, what would happen is that this would go into the knuckle, and then it would just read off of like the axle or something as it turned. And there'd be like a toner ring. Well, after a while, this would rust out, and this kind of wouldn't read quite right. But with this style, everything's basically inside of that wheel bearing. So because of that, there really shouldn't be any kind of reason why I've got any kind of other issue inside of there that this shouldn't fix, as long as, with it being a circuit code, there isn't an issue somewhere in the wire. So if it's a wire problem, that could be the cause of this. So all you need is a little tear in the wire, a little break in the wire somewhere. It doesn't even have to be the wire in the sensor. It could be where the wire mounts up here, goes through there, and then hooks in like that little harness area. You might not be able to see with the wheel in the way, but we'll get there. A lot of the GM products, so a lot of like the trucks and SUVs, if you wind up having really big wheels and tires, it can wear that wheel bearing out, especially if you go with the aftermarket ones. So this still has the factory 22-inch rims on it, which are extremely heavy. So these are 90 pounds. So essentially, you've got a lot of weight wearing on that bearing. And then a lot of times you want to just double check and make sure that you've got no play in it. Because this could be that wheel bearing, or it could be something else. But as of right now, when I check this, there is no play to this bearing. So this bearing is good and tight. once I got the wheel off, right away, a little bit of bad news. So you can kind of see, this isn't even hung up where it's supposed to be. So this should be clipped in there. This is attached the way it should. And I disconnected this real quick just to take a quick peek inside. So inside of here, it looks like everything looks good. So it's not like full of corrosion. So that should be all right. Now we still have the question of, from this point all the way back, whether or not that's in good shape, or if it's from this wire here, or part of the hub and sensor assembly. The first thing that I really want to do is basically take the caliper off. Once you get the caliper off, you'll be able to get the rotor off. And because I'm not jacking up the entire front end, I can't move this around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take the tie rod end loose. That'll allow me to move everything really easy and kind of get better angles on the bolts as we go through this. And by just taking the 18mm bolts off from the caliper bracket itself, it allows you to remove this as an assembly. I normally just flip it up here. So pretty simple. Let's you take a good look at the pads. You can see pad wise, that inside pad, little bit thin-ish, but it's not bad. It still has plenty of life left. I would say, you know, I don't need to worry about this for maybe a year or two maybe. So, but definitely much thicker than the outside pad. So it might be one of those things where we may want to go in here and just lube these slides up just to make sure everything's moving nice and easy. Then once that's off, if you're lucky, the rotor just comes off. Now sometimes they rust in place and can be a bit of a fight. And then we get a little bit better view of where that sensor goes. And it's kind of in road grime. So, but this is a great time to go ahead and spray the backside of the bolts here with some PB Blaster. Try and get that loosened up a little bit. That way it's not as big of a fight. Anytime things are super rusty, it can be a pretty good fight in order to get stuff off. And then you can go ahead and take the axle nut off. So it's got a washer that goes behind it. And if you're lucky, someone's used anti-seize in here, and this will be nice and easy to move. So like this, moves in and out pretty good, which means it's fairly free on the inside. Which does make me worry a little bit that this has been done before, especially seeing as this looks like it's newish, but it's definitely looking pretty rusty. And I have no problem replacing kind of messed up rusty parts. Then you've got these 3 bolts on the backside. Those are really easy to get to if you've got like a swivel socket, and it makes it pretty simple to get to them. Otherwise, if you just have a normal socket, you can normally line up on there pretty easily. If you've got like a shorter one, and you may need to put in a universal to kind of come in at an angle, depending on how close it interacts with this axle. The nice thing about the axle being able to move is that you can push that axle in a little bit. So push it in just a touch, and you can give yourself a little bit more free space. With that swivel socket, I don't need the free space. Or if this winds up being way tough, kind of like mine was, this top one was a fight. So I just put a deep socket on. That way it misses this one. This is a 3/8 drive, deep socket. I've got 3/8 to 1/2 adapter, and had to use a, pretty good length bar in order to get this one broken loose. So with that rust, this one's pretty tight. That was pretty simple. Got those out. Now just have to get this whole assembly out. There's an easy way and there's a hard way. So I'm going to try the easy way first. The easy way is basically just knocking against this with a hammer, seeing if you can like loosen it up and pull it out. Sometimes this is easier if you put the tie rod end back on. That way it gives you a nice stiffer fixture. That way when you strike it on this side here, it actually moves this as opposed to just turning the entire knuckle assembly. So much for that up close one. So once you get that knocked loose, you can pretty much see just how much rust kind of accumulates in here. That can kind of make it difficult. This was nice because this came off fairly easy. I do kind of wonder if someone's done this recently, because this wasn't too bad as far as the actual shaft goes. So the shaft itself was fairly simple to go in and out. You can see all the rust here. That corresponds with all the rust here. And there's your brake deflector stuff. So that just sits up there like that. And in case you want to messing up, the shield kind of juts outward to meet up with this. Just like that. So if you wind up knocking it down and going, uh-oh, and then put it on upside downy, it'll go on until you go to put your rotor on. So just make sure you got to go in the right way. And that's a good look at the wheel bearing unit. So all that wetness is basically the PB blaster. And then what I'll go ahead and do is I'll take like a little green scratcher, go inside of here, clean this up, and then that's getting a good dose of anti-seize. That way it's easy to do for the next person. Same thing with this axle shaft. The axle shaft will get a fair amount of anti-seize as well. That way this is all nice and easy for the next person as well. And then once you get that good and cleaned up, go ahead and throw some anti-seize on. I put way too much on. It does not need that much anti-seize, but that stuff's like the worst stuff you've ever gotten on yourself. As soon as you get a little teeny tiny bit, so if I were to, like, you know, barely touch that with my finger, you know, in about 30 minutes, I'd look like the Tin Man from the Wizard of Oz. And the same thing goes for, like, if you put it on your natural cleaning rag or something like that. The same situation. All you need to do is, like, accidentally forget that it's on there, then all of a sudden it's on your finger, then all of a sudden it's on your nose, and then it's on your ears somehow. So we should be all good to go. Now I'll put the new bearing in. And don't forget your heat shield, dust shield, whatever you want to call it. I got the wire ran back there. Now with the anti-seize, you can put the anti-seize on here to kind of help keep the rotor from locking up and sticking in place too. And then same thing with the face of the rotor. So that big old rusty area where it contacts with the wheel, you can kind of anti-seize that as well if you clean it up. So I'm not going to be cleaning it up. It's kind of an old rotor. I'm just going to throw a little bit of anti-seize on here. Throw the rotor on. Slap the caliper back in place. Throw the tie rod end back on. And route the wires where the wires go. Everything's back in place. I've got this wire clipped in right here. You can see that one there. I used the old clip because I didn't feel like undoing that Christmas tree pin type of area. So I got that plugged in. Now one thing that I didn't notice earlier was this damage over here. So looks like maybe this is worked out at one point in time and then the wheels touched it perhaps. But I don't see any initial damage to the wires on the inside. But this is going to be something important to remember, because if this gets wet and it does have any kind of damage on the inside, I'm going to notice it later. Or there might be, you know, this could be a good spot to start checking out and be like, hey, I know that wire runs through this section. Maybe it's damaged inside of there. But I'm going to wrap that up in electrical tape in the meantime. Oh no, it's begun. A little bit of anti-seize in the thumb. Then it's on the back of the hand. Somehow it's on the Fitbit and on my arm. Oh, don't touch the face. Don't touch the face. Now it's on the palm and the finger. And that finger. You're getting put away before you can do any more harm upon this world. Not even going to screw you on. Oh. Look like the Tin Man before long. Alright, so I just fired it up. Apparently did a circuit check and stuff. Everything's all good to go. So that fixed it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll check you next time.